An old woman stood alone in the cold wind, holding a small, worn-out bag that looked as tired as her eyes. People walked past her like she didn't exist, their footsteps fast, their faces cold, as if her pain was invisible. She didn't ask for help. She didn't even look up anymore, because life had already taught her that no one stops. Her hands trembled, not just from the cold, but from years of loss, regret, and silent suffering. She had nowhere to go and nothing left to hold on to. Just when it seemed like she would disappear into the crowd forever, a cowboy suddenly stopped in front of her. His boots hit the ground with quiet strength. He looked straight into her eyes, as if he could see every broken piece inside her. Then, with a calm voice that carried something different, he said words that made her heart stop for a moment. She was a woman who had lost everything: her home, her family, and even the small hope that once kept her alive each day had slowly taken something from her until nothing was left but silence and pain. She no longer dreamed about tomorrow, because for her tomorrow felt exactly like yesterday: empty, cold, and endless. People who once knew her had forgotten her name, and the world had moved on. Without looking back, she believed her story had already ended, and there was nothing more waiting for her on the other side. The cowboy, however, was different. He was known as a quiet, strong man who spoke less, but saw more than others ever could. He carried his own past in his eyes and understood pain without asking questions. As he stood in front of her, there was something unusual in the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. As if this moment was not Slucci, but the beginning of something neither of them expected. As he stood in front of her, there was something unusual in the way he looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. As if this moment was not chance, but the beginning of something neither of them expected. She felt his gaze, and for a second, she wanted to look away like she always did, but something about his presence made her pause. Her fingers tightened around the handle of her small, worn bag, and her lips trembled before she could stop herself. The words slipped out in a soft, broken whisper, "I am too old to start again." Her voice carried years of heartbreak and quiet defeat. It was not just a sentence, it was a truth she had accepted long ago, a truth that had slowly buried every dream she once had. The cold air seemed to freeze around them as those words hung between them, heavy and final. She expected him to nod politely and walk away like everyone else did. She had seen that reaction too many times, the brief moment of sympathy followed by distance. But he did not move. His boots stayed firm against the ground, and instead of turning away, he looked at her even more deeply, as if her words had only made him more certain of something she could not understand. Then something unexpected happened. A small, gentle smile appeared on his face. It was not a smile of amusement or disbelief, but one filled with calm strength, as if he had heard those words before and refused to accept them. His silence stretched for a moment, but it did not feel empty. It felt steady, like a quiet promise forming in the air. She felt confused. Why was he still standing there? Why was he not leaving like the others? A part of her wanted to push him away before he could say anything else, because hope was something she no longer trusted. But another part of her, the part she thought had disappeared long ago, felt something stir deep inside her chest. The cowboy finally took a slow step closer, not enough to frighten her, but enough to make his presence feel real and certain. His eyes never left hers, and in them she did not see judgment or doubt. She saw belief, a kind of belief that made her uncomfortable because it challenged everything she thought she knew about herself. Her heart began to beat faster, not out of fear, but out of something unfamiliar, something she could not name. The world around them faded into silence, as if nothing else mattered in that moment. And just when she felt she could not hold his gaze any longer, he spoke, his voice calm, steady, and filled with quiet warmth. "Then let us begin anyway." Those simple words landed softly, yet carried a weight that shook her from within. She felt something break, not in pain, but in release, like chains she had carried for years were starting to loosen. She did not know what beginning meant anymore. She did not know if she had the strength to try. But for the first time in a long time, she did not feel invisible, and that scared her as much as it gave her a fragile spark of hope. Those simple words echoed in her mind long after he said them, and she stood frozen, as if her feet had forgotten how to move. The fragile spark inside her flickered with uncertainty, because hope was something she had learned to fear more than pain. She looked at him again, searching for a hidden reason behind his calm expression, but found none, which only made her more uneasy. He did not rush her or fill the silence with empty promises. Instead, he simply waited, as if giving her the space to decide something she believed she no longer had. Control over her grip on the worn bag tightened as memories began to rise uninvited. Every failure, every loss, every door that had closed in her face played before her eyes, reminding her why she had stopped trying in the first place. She wanted to believe him, she truly did, but belief felt dangerous, like stepping onto ground that could break beneath her at any moment. Her voice did not come out this time, but her thoughts were loud. Why would a stranger care? Why would someone like him stop for someone like her? Nothing about it made sense, and that lack of understanding built a wall inside her chest. She took a small step back, not to leave, but to protect herself from something she could not yet accept. The cowboy noticed the hesitation in her movement, but his expression did not change. There was no frustration, no disappointment, only quiet patience, as if he had expected this moment all along. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple folded paper, offering it to her. Without a word, she looked at it, but did not take it immediately. Her eyes moved from the paper to his face, trying to find any sign of deception, but there was none, only steady belief that made her question herself even more. Her hand finally moved, almost against her own will, and she took the paper, her fingers trembling slightly as she unfolded it. Inside was an address, and nothing more. No explanation, no instructions, just a place that seemed ordinary, yet carried an unknown weight. She looked up at him again, confusion clear in her eyes, but he still said nothing, leaving the choice entirely in her hands. The silence grew heavier, not with pressure, but with meaning, as if this small moment held the power to change everything or nothing at all. Her heart began to race as she realized that he was not offering her answers, he was offering her a chance, and that terrified her more than anything, because chances required courage, and courage was something she believed she had lost a long time ago. The cold wind brushed against her face again, but this time she barely noticed it. Her focus locked between the paper in her hand and the man standing before her. She felt the past pulling her back, telling her to walk away, to stay where it was safe and familiar, but something deeper whispered a different possibility, one she did not fully understand. Yet the question was no longer what he wanted. The question had quietly become what she was willing to risk. The question had quietly become what she was willing to risk, and that realization made her chest feel tight, as if the air around her had grown heavier. She stared at the paper in her hand while her thoughts moved between fear and a faint pull. She could not ignore her past, warned her to step away, to protect what little strength she had left. Yet something inside her refused to stay silent. It was not loud or forceful, but it was there, steady and persistent, asking her what would happen if she chose differently. Just this once. Her eyes slowly lifted toward him again, searching for guidance or reassurance. But he did not move closer or try to convince her. He simply stood there, calm and certain, as if he trusted her decision before she had even made it. That quiet confidence unsettled her in a way she had never experienced, because no one had ever believed in her choices before. She had always been told what she could not do, what she should not try, and what was already over. Yet here, he was offering nothing but a possibility and leaving the rest to her. Her fingers tightened slightly around the paper. As her heartbeat grew louder in her ears, she felt the weight of years pressing against her, reminding her of every moment she had given up, every time she had chosen safety over courage, and how that safety had slowly turned into emptiness. She closed her eyes for a brief second, and in that darkness, she saw two paths, one that led back to the same lonely silence she knew too well, and another that was unclear, uncertain, and frightening, but somehow alive. When she opened her eyes again, something had shifted, not completely, not perfectly, but enough for her to take a small step forward. It was hesitant, almost fragile, yet it carried a quiet determination she did not fully understand. The cowboy noticed the movement, and for the first time his expression softened just slightly, not in surprise, but in recognition, as if he had been waiting for that exact moment. She looked down at the paper once more, then back at him, and though doubt still lived inside her, it no longer controlled her completely. Her voice finally returned, low and uncertain, but stronger than before. She did not ask questions, she did not seek guarantees, because deep down she knew there were none. Instead, she held on to that small spark that had begun to grow, the same spark his words had awakened when he said, "Let us begin anyway." Those words echoed again in her mind, but this time they felt different, no longer distant or impossible, but closer, almost within reach. She took another step, not away, but towards something new, and though fear still walked beside her, it no longer led the way. And in that quiet, powerful moment, she realized that beginning again was not about forgetting the past. It was about choosing not to let it decide everything that came next. And in that quiet, powerful moment, she realized that beginning again was not about forgetting the past. It was about choosing not to let it decide everything that came next. Her breath felt unsteady, yet stronger than before, as she finally closed her fingers firmly around the paper, not as a question, but as a decision. She lifted her eyes toward him and gave a small nod. It was not bold or confident, but it was real, and that was enough. She made a difficult choice. She trusted him not because she fully understood him, but because for the first time in years she wanted to understand what life could still offer. The cowboy did not celebrate or speak loudly. He simply turned slightly and gestured for her to walk with him, and after a brief pause, she followed her steps, slow and uncertain. At first, as if each one carried the weight of her past, but she did not stop. The road ahead was not easy. The cold wind still touched her skin. The ground beneath her feet was uneven, and her body ached from years of struggle. Yet something inside her had begun to change. Each step forward felt like a quiet victory over the fear that once controlled her thoughts. They walked in silence for a while, but it was not empty silence. It was filled with a strange sense of safety she had never felt before. The cowboy stayed beside her, not too close, not too far, allowing her to move at her own pace, as if he understood that this journey was not just about distance, but about healing. Moments of doubt still appeared, whispering that she might fail again, that she might regret this choice. But each time she looked ahead, she saw him still there, still steady, and that gave her just enough strength to keep moving. They reached a small place, simple and quiet, nothing grand, nothing overwhelming, yet to her it felt like something she had not seen in a long time. Beginning, he opened the door and stepped aside, letting her enter first. She hesitated for a second, standing at the threshold of a life she did not recognize. But then she stepped inside, her heart beating faster. As she looked around, everything felt unfamiliar, yet strangely welcoming. She placed her worn bag down slowly, as if releasing a part of her old life along with it. Days did not become easy overnight. There were moments when she felt tired, when her body refused to cooperate, when her mind told her to give up and return to what she once knew. But she did not leave. She woke up each day and tried again, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, but always moving forward step by step. She started again, even when it felt impossible, and through it all the cowboy remained present, not with grand words, but with quiet actions, fixing what was broken, guiding, without forcing, supporting, without control. She was no longer invisible. She was no longer alone, and for the first time in a long time she began to believe that maybe this new path was not a mistake, but the life she thought she had lost forever. She slowly began to see changes, not just around her, but deep within her, as days turned into something she never imagined. A life that once felt empty now carried meaning in the smallest moments. Her steps grew steadier, her eyes no longer searched the ground, and the silence that once haunted her turned into quiet peace. She was not the same woman who had stood in the cold waiting to disappear. She had found purpose again, not in something grand, but in simply living without fear of tomorrow. And the cowboy, he never asked for thanks. He never reminded her of what he had done. He just stayed, the same calm presence who believed when no one else did. And perhaps that was the reason everything changed, because in the end it was never about age or time. It was about one person choosing to believe when she no longer could, and that belief gave her a life she thought was already gone forever.